and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. This week marks the 8th United Nations Global Road Safety Week, spotlighting the urgent need to reduce traffic deaths and injuries worldwide. But the painful truth is that in a country where an average of 18 people die on the roads every day, Malaysia's roads are not safe for everyone, not for FRU officers or for wildlife or for you and me. But we can address that because those recent incidences reflect broader weaknesses in our road safety ecosystem that can be addressed. So how do we build a culture of safety that protects everyone on and around our roads? Well, joining me today to discuss this further is Professor Dr. Kulanthayan Mani, who is an Executive Council member of the National Road Safety Council of Malaysia and also a professor at UPM's Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences. Prof. Kulant, thank you so much for being on the show with me. Before we get into the heart of this issue, I do want to talk about something. I want to address the importance of language, of terminology. And I think it's important because you've highlighted before that we should stop saying road accidents. We should instead start using the term road crashes. Talk to me why this is important. What is at stake with our change of language?
Yeah, if you use the word road accident, that means, like, say, for example, if I just walk and I just hit someone, I will always, I will just say, oh, sorry, I accidentally hit you. And when I say that word, I don't feel what I did was actually a big mistake, and I expect him to forgive me. So if we keep on doing that, it is as though like this event is completely not preventable. So the key message here is road crash are preventable. If accident is not preventable. So when we know that these events are all preventable, then the most suitable word is road crash instead of road accident.
I feel like the words we use are so important, particularly because there's also an element of needing to be accountable if there's a road crash. So accident means no one is it's nobody's fault. I also wanted to ask you, Prof, about we've seen a recent string of really horrible road crashes involving heavy vehicles and lorries recently, from the FRU officers that were killed to the wildlife baby elephant that was killed, and then recently we've had a security guard who was killed on a motorbike just waiting at the traffic light. All of these things, I think, are just a microcosm of a larger issue of road safety. How do you see this, particularly involving heavy vehicles, and how does that play into the wider ecosystem of Malaysia's road systems?
Right. If you look at heavy good vehicles, the biggest challenge in heavy good vehicles is you are carrying load. So when you're carrying load, then there is a huge challenge for you to control your vehicle. So say, for example, if there is an emergency situation and I need to brake my vehicle, I need the time and space more compared to if it was a normal private vehicle. Okay, because the load itself will need more time and space.
To stop, right, yeah.
Right. And then in terms of even, say, for a crash when it happens, the force is very high because the force is equivalent to the mass times with acceleration. The mass is your load. So just imagine you're carrying a huge load and I will times that with the speed. Speed is acceleration. So for all heavy good vehicle drivers, since your load is high, the only way for you to reduce the risk is by driving at a lower speed. Because if you drive at a higher speed, in any event, the force is going to be multiple times because the mass times with acceleration. So on that ground, I request to the two groups. One is to those heavy good drivers, you have a huge responsibility not only to save yourself, but to make sure that everyone else whom are using the same roadway at the same time are safe from you as well. So drive slow so that you can reduce the probability of an event of a crash, and even if a crash happens, the impact would be very much low. That's one. Second is the vehicle company owners. Okay, you also have equal responsibility because your vehicle is a high risk vehicle compared to any other vehicle. Therefore, the company which has or owns those kind of vehicle, you have a huge responsibility to make sure your vehicle is safe at every point of time when it enters the roadway system. So it's an equal responsibility between the two groups.
Well, I'm actually glad that we're talking about this because I think we think that we understand how crashes happen, right? And we think, oh, it's, you know, every case is unique. But you studying this have kind of have looked at it as 3 phases of how a crash happens. Maybe you can talk about it from impact to trauma. So talk to me about the 3 phases.
Yeah. If you see, say for example, say if a crash happens, say if I'm as a pedestrian, I'm on a roadway, I'm on a pedestrian standing outside. A car comes and hits me. So the first contact point of the crash is when the car and the person. So vehicle and human. So that's the first injury point in terms of the crash. The second one will be is after they have hit me, I would fall on the ground. The ground is hard surface.
Right.
So that is the second injury point. And then the third one is after I fall down and when my body is not moving, but don't forget my organs are still moving. So when my organs are moving, they can crash among them. They can crash or hit against each other. And this is where it can lead to internal bleeding and everything. So one crash involving pedestrian, you have 3 kind of phases there. First is vehicle to human, human to environment, and then within the human itself. So this can lead to fatal crash. That's why that all pedestrians or all bicyclists or all motorcyclists, these are the 3 groups who are outside the vehicle. This group are
the
most
vulnerable.
Risk. Yeah, most vulnerable.
Okay.
Compared to anyone who is seated inside the vehicle. If you sit inside the vehicle, you have 1 layer of protection. Your vehicle body gives you 1 layer of protection. So all those people outside the vehicle, your risk is very high.
Okay. Well, this is interesting. Talk to me about why the timing of fatalities, because not all crashes result in injuries, result in fatalities. And timing is the factor between all 3. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so say if a crash happens, there is always four different kind of outcomes. One is only vehicle damage. Nothing happens to the passengers. Only vehicle damage, that's the least. And then after that, you will have, vehicle damage, you will have minor injuries, then you have serious injuries, then you have fatality. So this is the 4 different type of outcomes. So in terms of road safety, if you look at the strategies, we look at 3 types of phases. One is where the outcome is where it happens on the spot. That means dying on the spot. That is the worst scenario, dying on the spot. The second one is dying within 3 hours. And the next one is dying within 30 days. Why 30 days is because Malaysia adopts the global rules where road safety death is counted based on an incident happened within 30 days. Right. So when you look at these 3 phases, the biggest bulk is at dying on the spot.
Really?
70%. Just
wow. Why is that? Because the impact is so severe?
Yeah. Because say, any accidents happening among those who are outside the vehicle, be it motorcycle or be it bicyclist or pedestrian, then the impact is direct to their body. And for a human, the maximum transfer of energy I can absorb is only up to 30 km per hour.
30 kilometers?
Say if you're driving at 70, and the point at a point when you hit me, it's say it's 50. Say you are driving at 70, you saw me, you press your brake, and then by the time your vehicle touch my body is at 50. But my body can tolerate up to 30. Not anything beyond than 30, then there will be injury to me.
Oh, that's a very horrible example to give.
So the high number of, the higher the speed, then the higher of transfer of energy happens to the human body.
Right.
And when we can't tolerate, that's when it can lead to a fatal crash.
So you've presented numbers that were very sobering before. I mentioned in my intro 18 fatalities a day from the roads of Malaysia. 6,400 road deaths a year.
Right.
I think sometimes I forget that this figure actually constitutes a public health emergency, a public health crisis. What do you think about the way our, what is it about our roads that allow for these statistics, these horrifying statistics, to remain so high? Have you determined why, what causes, what are the factors behind such high numbers?
Okay, if you look, there are various reasons. One, the first one, if you say, is we have high number of private vehicle usage in the country. For a 36 million population, We have registered vehicles close to that number, 36 million as well.
One per person.
Yeah, so could be maybe active vehicles within that could be say, roughly say about more than 25 million. But even that number is very high. One easy cross-check, you can just check back with your own, the number of people who are living in your house. How many people in your household, and how many number of registered vehicles? If it's 1-to-1 ratio, that's when the risk is. Any countries which has high number of private vehicles will have challenge. So one way forward is to move towards public transport. And all those countries which are doing very well, say name it, Sweden, Norway, Australia, Japan, all have invested heavily on public transport and in particular rail-based public transport.
Wow.
So that's one way forward. If we can move towards rail-based public transport, that means the number of trips using private vehicles will reduce and some will be shifted over here. So we are not saying completely leave private vehicles because you have one. But what we are saying is not all travels need to be done using your private vehicles. There are some trips where you can switch from private to public transport. So let's start with that switch. Okay. So that would be one way forward. Okay. The other one, if you look at, we have the roadway system. We have federal roads, we have state roads, municipal roads, okay, highway. Among all these roads, the risky one is the municipal roads and the state roads. The less risk is the highway. One easy reason is whichever roadway system which has a divider, the physical divider, that means I can avoid frontal collision happening.
Because of the divider?
Because of the divider. That means this way I'm going, the opposite direction, okay, I can avoid the frontal collision in all those roads with the physical divider.
Right.
Okay. But those in municipal roads and state roads, you won't have.
It's just a line.
Yeah. So when I want to overtake the vehicle in front of me, I have to go to the opposite lane. And when I'm driving in that lane, I will drive fast because I want to overtake. So being in opposite lane is risk. And driving at a fast speed, and if there's one vehicle approaching coming there, then that ends up frontal collision. So that's why even any crash, even at a low speed, if it's frontal crash, can lead to fatal. So this is where
the direction of the crash makes a difference.
Seriously. The frontal and the side crash are much more riskier compared to rear end crash. So frontal crash will happen in places where there is no divider. The side collision happens mostly in at traffic lights. At traffic lights, when everyone sees it as green, as though it's green, and everyone moves at the same time, any crash happening at that junction can lead to fatal.
So how are we doing in terms of global standards? You mentioned that we adopt the WHO, some WHO standards. When we benchmark ourselves in terms of road safety performances, where do we stand? I mean, I'm thinking about in terms of not just infrastructure, but speed management and the ways we design our roads. How do we measure up?
Okay, if you look in terms of the vehicle standards, we are doing pretty well, I would say, because vehicle standard, we follow international standards. So vehicle standards are fine. That's why you can see now most of our vehicles will have, say, 6 airbags and everything.
Okay.
The standards of vehicle is fine. We have rooms to improve in terms of the safety for the roads as well, and as well as the other infrastructure which plays a role in the whole globe. I mean the whole loop. It will be a good way forward if we start adopting safe system approach.
Safe system approach.
What is safe system approach is? Safe system approach says that we accept humans have limitation and humans will do error. That means after this we shouldn't be saying this is because of attitude problem.
Okay.
Put it aside.
So it's not about the person in
Put
the vehicle or
because if we keep on using the word saying that this is because of attitude problem, then forever we may not be able to address the issue.
That's true.
Right.
That's true.
So put that aside. Take it very clearly. Humans have limitations. Humans will do error. So even when humans do error, in the worst case scenario, an accident may happen, but it should not lead to fatal.
So how do we design our roads to make sure
the whole
that,
thing, the whole infrastructure has to be safe. So even when the human does an error, a crash may happen, but not fatal.
A fatality.
So this is what adopted by Sweden. Sweden promoted this, and even this was passed in their parliament. So to make sure that when it passed in parliament, every stakeholder who is involved, whether car manufacturer, whether road designers, everyone has a duty now to make sure that whatever they produce, whatever they design, has to save the people at the end of the day.
Okay, there is a kind of fail-safe. Well, talk to me about walking and cycling, because the UN Global Road Safety Week, this year's focus is on making walking and cycling safer.
Yeah.
So the question is it safe to walk and cycle in Malaysia? And I ask that not facetiously, because the number of fatalities involving pedestrians and cyclists are relatively low. So should we read that as it's actually safe to walk and cycle in Malaysia?
Okay, quite a good question, but few angles over there. Okay, right. So the 8th UN Global Road Safety Week happens every 2 years once. It started in 2011 and now we are here. And every year the theme are different. So this year's theme is on safe walking and cycling. So coming back to the next question you asked, Malaysian status, if you say. The number of deaths involving pedestrians are close to about 5%.
Okay.
And number of deaths involving cyclists is about 1.6%.
Okay.
So the numbers are low. The numbers are low doesn't mean that they are safe. It's because number of people walking and number of people cycling are less. So the exposure was less.
Okay.
But generally, walking activity and cycling activity is much more safer compared to any motorized vehicle travel.
Oh, why is that?
Yeah. Because in a motorized vehicle travel, the speed is there. The biggest issue in road safety is the speed. If you ask me, tell me one intervention that can give us the highest return on investment, go for speed cut.
Okay.
Cut the speed. You can get both returns. You can prevent crash from happening, one, or in the event a crash happens, you can prevent injuries. So coming back here, so knowing that pedestrians are low and then cyclists are low, so the idea here is, can we move more people to these two activities? So when we move them to these two activities, walking and cycling, it means their motorized travel is less. So when their motorized travel is less, they are much more safer. And number of crash goes down and number of injuries goes down. So that's the reason why this theme comes up. So even though it's 1 week, May 12 till May 18, the UN Global Road Safety Week, but this theme, safe walking and cycling, is valid for another 2 years until the next theme is out.
Okay.
So my request over here is, for all stakeholders, whether at the local level, say municipal council or state governments, okay, this is the time for all of us to come forward. If you can support this initiative, support walking initiative, support cycling initiative, then in that way, we can have less motorized travel trips, and then we can reduce number of crashes and injuries in your own respective districts. In your own respective districts. So that way we can make your district much more a livable place.
Yeah.
And for sure, once walking and cycling goes up, public transport usage will go up.
How do you, in the kind of chicken and egg cycle of trying to convince the local government and district to adopt these measures to make walking and cycling safer, and then versus the people who will walk and cycle who think it's not safe, and we're far safer driving 3 minutes to the nearest mini market. How do you, who do you convince first? How do you get buy-in from both?
Yeah. Need to get buying in from both, but I'm not sure which angle that you should start first.
Yeah. Is it bottom-up approach? Is it top-down?
I think
approach?
both can do it.
Both
can work. It can be supply-driven demand or demand-driven supply. Both ways can find. Okay. So my request here is, for those people, for those who are entrusted to provide the infrastructure, instead of providing new infrastructure, wait first. Can you make sure the existing infrastructure is safe first?
Okay.
Right?
How do we do
if you have already built some walkways, if you have already built some cycling lanes, can you make sure that those two infrastructures that you have already built it, make them safe first? So once you make them safe first, and when people start using such facility, when they feel they will feel comfortable, then they will spread the news. So they will be your agent to pull the other crowd. You don't have to pull it.
Okay.
Let them use it. So after you have make sure that you have taken care of the existing, then you start providing new ones. So this is what I'm hoping.
What makes for safe walking and safe cycling? What are the indicators that you look at to say, okay, I think this area is safe for pedestrians and cyclists.
Okay, the whole idea of this having this bicycle lane and pedestrian lane or pedestrian walkway is to segregate them from the vehicles. Okay, because if I mix these two people with the vehicle in the same roadway, then they are at risk because this vehicle can crash them, can collide them.
Very vulnerable without any protection.
So the space that you provide to them must be a space where these vehicles can never enter.
Oh.
If they enter, then again the collision happens.
So clearly marked.
Clearly marked, and then make it feel comfortable, because when you're walking, you don't want to feel the heat as well, isn't it? So if there are trees along the line, then you feel much more better to walk. Okay. And then if we can package it not only as a road safety initiative, if it's a health initiative, going slightly larger concept as a health initiative, you also will be helping the environment feel. You also will be contributing towards the health field, isn't it?
Yeah.
The more people walk, the more healthier they are.
Yeah.
And the more people don't use
non-communicable diseases.
And the more people don't use motorized vehicle, then your environment gets better.
Speaking about motorized vehicle, how do you feel about e-scooters? How safe are they? Should they be incorporated in our discussion about road safety and mobility?
Yeah. Any type of vehicle, we should bring it into the discussion, because if they are going to be within the system, it has to be very clear. Any vehicles, doesn't matter whether it's e-vehicle or what, if the speed is there, then it contributes. Then it is a matter of concern. So the issue here is mainly, what is the speed?
Right.
Yeah. So if for a bicycle, we are segregating. So similarly, motorcycle, we also have motorcycle lane. This is the reason why these three group we have lanes. We don't have lorry lanes, we don't have, say, van lanes or what. No, the three groups who are outside the vehicle who are at risk, that's why we split them, put them separately. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned a few times how important it is to manage speed for us to be able to address road safety better. How do we think about that? Speed management in the country. Everyone knows the highways are 110, and certain roads have different kilometers per hour limits. How do we think about reducing speed to reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities?
Good. This is the question. I think this is the biggest return we will get once we invest on speed reduction. Okay. One good example or one good way forward for us to move is to start speed reduction in the areas where needed the most. Okay. So one good area will be the school zones. Okay. So school zones.
What are the speeds for schools?
Okay, the school zones. As I told you, the maximum human injury body tolerance I can take is up to 30. So therefore, all school zones should be 30 km per hour. And this is global practice, not Malaysia practice. It's global practice, because humans are the same no matter where. So as long as there are pedestrians, and then if that zone where pedestrians will interact with vehicles, WHO's recommendation is all those zones has to be 30 km per hour. So coming back to Malaysia, we have 10,200 plus schools in the country. Okay, so you look at one whole country. I have 10,000 school locations. If I start my first speed reduction, instead of going blanket rule for the whole country, if I said, okay, can we have 30 km per hour school limit only in school zones first? But it's 10,000 locations.
Yeah.
So the return will be very high.
Yeah, it will spread.
Right. And then even say, if this is my school, 30, if you are normally driving, say, at 90, you cannot suddenly bring down to 30. So from 90, he has to bring down to 70, then 50, then 30. So that means because of this initiative, I get a spillover benefit over another 200 meters this side, another 200 meters this side. Because after 30, you cannot accelerate immediately. Okay. It will take time to accelerate. And not everyone will accelerate. There could be someone who may not go back to the original 90. They may go back to 70. Or maybe go back to 50. Or there could be some portion who may feel comfortable
just
to maintain 30. So on this angle, I will get 200 meters benefit. This angle, I will get some benefits over some meter. So if I do that for 10,000 locations, then I feel we are making a real impact at population level. Wow. And if we are able to win this war, I will say this traffic war here, then we can start exploring on different other locations where pedestrians and vehicles collision points. It could be residential areas. It could be shopping areas. As long as high number of pedestrian movements and there are vehicles.
This is such a great way to get impactful change. Who do we need to speak to make this happen, Prof. Kulan?
There are many people here, there are many people are involved in order to make this workable, to make this success.
Is it the schools that need to?
Everyone.
Oh, everyone, okay.
We go this way first. First is those who provide the infrastructure. Okay. That means who owns the road. Right. There are many owners. We have highway owners, we have the federal JKR who owns the road. There are some roads under the state JKR. There are some roads by the state local council. Whoever who owns the road, we are kindly requesting for you to provide, if in your road, there are schools in your road, can you help to designate those areas for 30? That's one. 30 is the signboard, but signboard only will not change people's behavior, isn't it? But we support it together by having the humps.
All right.
That engineering measure. The engineering measure is needed. When you have the humps, and then you also should put the rumble strips, so that to make sure that people are aware, they're entering some zone. So the first is the signboard to tell, you're entering the largest zone of 30. Then the rumble strips comes in. Then the humps comes in. Then only you have the pedestrian crossing. And that pedestrian crossing, I would request, make it slightly elevated, because children are short, the size, so you can see them a bit more visible. And even the pedestrian crossing now also functions like another hump, because it's slightly elevated. So if you have to combine these four, then I believe you can reduce the speed in that zone. And after some time, when people get used to it, they will be able to reduce it. And most important, when we see pedestrian crossing, we have to respect pedestrian.
Respect it, yes.
Pedestrian is also part of a roadway system. It's not only the road belongs to vehicle. Road also belongs to pedestrian. So my request, every vehicle users, you have to stop for pedestrians to cross. Please reduce your speed earlier, so to make sure the pedestrians feel comfortable to cross. Reduce your speed earlier. When you reach that particular pedestrian crossing, stop. And we can make a change, because as long as the first vehicle stops, the other vehicle behind has to stop.
So you heard it here. Make sure that you reduce your speed and respect the pedestrian crossing. Let's make the school zone's speed limit a reality.
Sure.
Thank you so much for being on the show. That's all we have for you in this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching.